2, 3. So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, everywhere in the 5 continents. Today is the 16th of October, 2022. And today we have our 86th International English Online meeting. Our guest speaker today is the very famous, well-known professional Debra Suarez from the United States. Thank you so much, dear Debra, for your time and the expertise you are going to share with us this morning. Okay, let me, as usual, show my PowerPoint presentation. As I said before, this is our 86th International English Online meeting, believe it or not. And today is October the 16th. Okay, let's take a moment to pause and reflect. My dear Roxana, could you read it and briefly say what you think about this?
Sure, no problem. Education is no preparation for life. Education is life itself. Wow, that's really wonderful. Yes, we need to live our profession. We need to feel it, and it has to be part of our life. It's not a profession only.
Yes,
that.
Thank you, dear Roxy. Okay, who is presenting soon? Well, next Sunday, we'll have Lorena Ojeda from Argentina. Then on Sunday, the 30th, we'll have the Eugenia Carrion, Marina Suarez, Marina Gonzalez, Claudio Juin, and Maria del Valle from Argentina. They will be talking about the reality and challenges of teaching and learning English in Argentina. Our wonderful good friend, Monica Rodriguez, will be talking to us about educational coaching, a humanizing approach to ELT. Then the last meeting this year, I hope, is the 91st International English Online meeting, encouraging professional development in Latin America with our good friends from Colombia, Argentina, Bolivia, Peru, Mexico, and Ecuador. As usual, let me remind you that you can watch all the videos in our YouTube channel. And let's say a few words about our good friend, Debra. Okay, let me find the information. Okay, wait. Okay. Ph.D, MS-TESOL, MA-TESOL, TEFL, Career Professional, National Advisor, International Consultant with an unwavering belief in the power of education to change the world. Debra has dedicated her professional life to improving the educational experiences of ELT students and teachers and members of minority populations throughout the US and the world. Her professional roles have progressed through positions often held by TEFL professionals. She sees her career in 3 broad stages. Number 1, as classroom teacher. Number 2, as university professor and international consultant. And 3, as senior federal advisor. Debra just rotated off the TESOL International Board of Directors 19 to 22. She's past president of Maryland TESOL. She has mentored hundreds of new ESL, EFL professionals who now serve the field throughout the US and the world, and is currently developing a statewide mentoring and leadership program. A highlight of her career was when she was recently awarded Maryland TESOL's Lifetime Achievement Award. Debra holds a Ph.D. in language education, an MS-TESOL, and an MBA degree specializing in education business management. Dr. Suarez is a published peer-review author, publishing 2 books, book chapters and journal articles. Her current research is focused on developing impactful TESOL leaders. And the most important, you are a great human being who always wants to help other people to learn and learn more and more. Thank you so much, Debra. So virtual round of applause for you. And the screen is all yours.
Thank you so much, Jaime. I am so thrilled to be here. it's been months in the planning, for several months, that we've been talking about my joining. Thank you, Jaime, for putting this together. And thank you for all of you for being here. I think that this is a special community that's been created, and I'm very honored to be here. And I love seeing your faces, some folks that I've met in person. Glenda, hi. Carol, hi. But I'm also so happy to see faces that I recognize your names, but I haven't met in person. And so this is just really wonderful. So, but without further ado, I am going to share my screen. I do a little PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, we can see it.
Great. So the title of my presentation is, What's Love Got to Do with It? The role of shared values and mutual purpose in creating educational change. I have to say that that first line, what's love got to do with it, is probably something that I would not really feel very comfortable talking about in most other venues. But Jaime, you've created an environment here, a community here. And so I'm really, really comfortable. And when we first started talking about my presenting, I went right to this idea that I'm trying to play around with, leading through love. And is there epistemology of love, a loving epistemology to help us as a background to what we do in ELT? So fasten your seatbelts because it's a wild ride here.
Okay.
I have some random musings I'll be sharing with you, but based in some research as well.
I guess you love Tina Turner, right?
Yes, I do.
Who doesn't?
Okay, and you see my LinkedIn account there. If I think I'm LinkedIn friends with most of you here, but if not, there is my LinkedIn account. Please do reach out. So, okay, so I've been around for 30 years in the field, as I've shared. I'm an old lady, which is great. I love it. But I'm at the, and my research has been historically in looking at heritage language learners, particularly speakers of Spanish in the United States. And I started out looking at heritage language maintenance, how families in the United States will pass on Spanish as a home language. That's how I started my research. That was my dissertation. And then throughout my career, my research has focused on that, and then also on teacher education and teacher training. But very recently, within the past several years, I've been looking more and more at leadership and developing leadership in the ELT space. And I have to send a shout out and acknowledge a very dear friend of mine and close colleague. Her name is Doa Rashed. I don't know if she was able to join today. I know she said she would try. But Doa and I have been working closely on issues of leadership and leadership development. So that's kind of where my focus is now. And I think it's because of being a veteran TESOL person, a veteran TESOL leader, that I'm looking at developing not only my own leadership, but helping to develop the next generation of ELT leaders. And so, you know, looking at leadership, I'm very much influenced not only by the literature in the educational leadership space, but also the literature in other spaces, such as management, organizational development, psychology, political science. And this is probably because of my experience, my recent experience for the past 10, 12 years in the federal government, particularly working at the White House Initiative and the US Department of Education. So I've been exposed to different kinds of leadership. So where I am now is really figuring out this space that is called transformational leadership and drawing on a cross-disciplinary framework. So I share here a definition from Burns, who was a political analyst and really started the exploration of this thing called transformational leadership. And in the 1970s, he defined it as, and I'll read it here, a leadership style in which leaders encourage, inspire, and motivate followers in order to innovate and create change that will help grow and shape the future success of whatever the organization, the goal, or the intended outcome. There is a lot in that one sentence to unpack. But what I want to emphasize here is that in the education space, a lot of times we talk about leadership styles, right? And we'll talk about leadership strategies, right? And all of that is great, but sometimes it feels that we don't start at the beginning. And the beginning is why? Why do we engage in leadership in the educational space? Why do we talk about teacher leaders? We talk a lot about how, but we don't really start with the why. And I think the why is what Burns is talking about here. The why is to create an impact, to have some sort of an influence, to change something, right? So if we look at transformational leadership as a body of literature drawing on different fields as a cross-disciplinary framework, we can say that one thing for the education space is to start with why we are engaging in leadership, and it is to impact change. So there are a couple, four basic ideas that we can go to within this framework of transformational leadership. And I must say that this idea of transformational leadership, transforming, impacting, influencing, started in the 1970s, but throughout the past 30 some odd years, it has been developed. It has evolved. It has been improved upon by many other researchers from different fields. So one aspect of transformational leadership talks about the leader's ability to motivate the follower, and that's a special word, we'll come back to that in a minute, but to motivate the follower to accomplish more than what the follower planned to accomplish. Now, the word follower isn't really a word we tend to use in the education space, so I want to talk about that for a minute. I do workshops on leadership development, and I will often ask the question, how many of you here are leaders? And everybody raises their hand. Well, most people raise their hand. Then I'll ask the question, okay, how many of you are followers? Not that many people raise their hand, or maybe someone kind of, because the word follower has gotten a bad reputation. It has gotten a bad reputation as somebody who does what they are told, right? Or someone who is just going to kind of blindly do what they're told to do. But in the concept of transformational leadership, follower, that's not what a follower is. A follower is someone who has agency to join this initiative. A follower is somebody who has values, has purpose, and that's why they have joined this initiative. So the word leader and follower here is not the way we sometimes think about it in other spaces, okay? So thinking about the word follower here, the leader's ability to motivate, and that's an important word, motivate the follower to accomplish more than what that person had planned to accomplish. So the leader is motivating toward more. Okay, another concept. Leaders and followers motivate each other to accomplish more and reach higher. So if leaders and followers or individuals are coming together around a shared purpose, something they want to impact in education, well, what can they imagine individually becomes even greater when we come together. So that's another component of transformational leadership. So leaders motivate followers to do more than they had planned to accomplish. Leaders and followers together help each other to reach higher. The third one, inspiration. Leaders inspire followers, concentrating on the follower's values and helping the follower to align these values with the values of the organization, mission, or intended outcome. I shared a little bit earlier while you were interviewing me during the fun interview a few minutes ago, and you asked me, Jaime, what are some of my favorite moments in my career? And I'll share with you that after finishing, well, I I was in the middle of my doctoral program, but I'd finished my master's and I was in the middle of my doctoral program. It's back in the mid to late 1990s. And some of you may recall that 1996, 97, the Berlin Wall fell. And so many of the republics were coming, the former Soviet republics, coming forward as independent. And one of those was Ukraine. And I was still early in my career, but I met this woman named Dr. Lydia Tarnowski, who was a professor of German language at Siena College in New York. Now, Lydia was US born and raised, but she, her parents had fled Ukraine just around the time of World War II. And so she grew up with a love of Ukraine. And the moment that Ukraine declared itself an independent republic, she was on the scene to give to Ukraine what she had. And what did Lydia have? Lydia had a love of Ukraine, and Lydia knew how to teach languages. She knew how to do that. She knew how to teach teachers. So right away, she created a small group of us. There was only 3 or 4 of us, but she created a teacher training program. And we traveled at that time from New York to Ukraine. We traveled many times. We went back over the course of several years. And Lydia was a leader who inspired and motivated. I would have followed Lydia anywhere, and I did. We went to just outside of Chernobyl. And what we did was we created programs of teacher education programs. We brought what we had, what Lydia called Western methodologies, but that was only half of it. The other half was were the teachers in that context, taking it, adapting it, keeping some ideas, throwing out other ideas, and creating their own. So we would spend about a month or so working with the teachers in a location, but then we'd leave. And then the teachers created that center. And we did this in different pockets in Ukraine. And so, you know, that is an example. When I think back on leaders who have motivated me, I think of Lydia Tarnowski, who had the vision, and she motivated us to travel under, at that time, very difficult circumstances. So I share that with you. And then the last component, and please jump in anytime, Jaime. You know,
don't worry, it happens to the best world guest speakers.
Thank you. So the last component at the moment, as I said, it evolved over time, but is that leaders emphasize new possibilities, that they promote a compelling vision of the future and a strong sense of purpose. So a real basic idea of transformational leadership is that as leaders, we don't have to be designated leaders, we can lead from wherever we are. We don't need the title chair, we don't need the title principal, we can lead from wherever we are, but we lead by getting together with others around a purpose, a mission, a vision. But it's the leader who takes it to the next step, focuses on the individual, and takes it to the next step to imagine more, envision more, and achieve more. So those are some of the basic concepts of transformational leadership. And if I were here today to talk to you about transformational leadership, there's a lot of slides I'd have, which would show you the evolution of this concept. But that's not what I'm here to talk with you about. I'm here to talk with you about love. Which brings me to this individual here. I'm going to be talking with you about a framework, some work that's been done by Dr. Julie Lively, who was an assistant professor at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. And I wonder if maybe 1 or 2 of you here might have known her. But Julie and I were assistant professors together, brand new assistant professors, freshly minted PhDs in the late 1990s at the University of Alabama. And she had started a year before me, but still she was new. And she, you know, we became friends. We were both assistant professors and we became friends. And Julie has a body of work that she has produced, which has influenced me. And I want to share that with you. So back in 1999, Julie had a homework assignment. She was invited to be a guest lecturer for the University of Alabama. And the University of Alabama at that time had what was called a campus ministers lecture series, Faith Seeking Understanding. And she was very involved in this group, and they invited her to be a guest lecturer. But they didn't leave it open. They said to her, Julie, here's your homework assignment. What if this were your last lecture? What if when you come to talk with us in March, if it was your last lecture, we'd like you to give us a lecture that is the last lecture that you would ever give. That was her homework assignment. And we became friends, as I said, and she was working on this, and she shared with me how she really took this to heart. And the direction she took it was, she, for herself, decided to explore her personal and her professional experiences and to explore her own personal faith, because she wanted to articulate components of what she called an epistemology that drove her research. She was a qualitative researcher. What she produced is really the most amazing piece of what I would call reflective and confessional scholarship, and it has had a great impact on my life. So here's Julie's dilemma. As I said, Julie was an assistant professor. She was a professor of educational leadership. Her work was to develop principals and supervisors in the education space. Julie came from the ELT space, working with and for language minority students. And she was a researcher at heart, and she was a qualitative researcher. Jaime, I see a hand is raised. Does somebody want to jump in?
Yeah, I was going to ask you to interrupt for a minute.
Sure.
Hello, Bismarck. Bismarck, hello. No, maybe he or she, I don't know, has a problem with connection, so we can hear him or her. Yeah, okay, go on, Debra.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so she was a qualitative researcher. So let's take a moment and look at what qualitative research means from Julie's perspective, right? Because it's at the heart of her question. So the first blue box, if you can see it. So Julie says qualitative research is a form of research that is naturalistic or interpretive. Instead of doing experiments, right? Instead of experiments with control groups and all of that, we enter the natural setting. And so for Julie, she went into schools, right? And for Julie, she was interviewing human beings, observing human beings, right? That's what qualitative research is, going into the natural setting. And what she says, as a researcher, I interact with others, right? So I'm not wearing a scientific lab coat, right? I am interacting with human beings, some of whom, and this was important for her, some of whom are very different than me. I collect my own data, maybe formal, informal, and then I come to my own conclusions about those people. So this is how Julie was seeing her research, her work as a qualitative researcher. And that became a dilemma for her. The burning question that she started to explore, and it was a good year that she talked about this and she talked with friends and she was struggling with this. And she said, my question is what I do as a researcher and a teacher every day, is it consistent with what I hold critical in my life? What I do every day as a researcher and a teacher, is it aligned with my faith? Is it aligned with my values? That's a big question.
Yes, it is.
So Julie went back to her dissertation research. As I said, she was only in her early 30s and her dissertation was only 4 years behind her. So she went back to that dissertation research. And this is the kind of research that Julie did and was doing. As I conducted research with and on adolescent females of color, I was unknowingly reshaping the girls' experiences to either positively or negatively with my own notions of what it means to be an adolescent female and a Mexican-American in the United States. Julie lived in the southern, on the border of the US border, southern border. And she was exploring notions of success of Spanish-speaking female Mexican-Americans in the United States, specifically adolescents. That was her dissertation research. But now, several years later, she's wondering about if her dissertation research is aligned with her values. And she's saying what she realized now is that she unknowingly, without knowing it, she was reshaping their experiences. She was othering them while she was creating herself, putting herself as the same. So this is amazing, right? That she had such the ability to rethink her own dissertation research and how she was as a researcher with human beings. Why is othering potentially problematic and unethical? So the word othering, right? To reposition someone else. Now, Bell Hooks, who is an African-American scholar and cultural critic, describes othering as violence. It's a violence of radical critical thinkers, feminist thinkers who participate in the discourse of otherings. And here is a quote. She plays with the voice of the colonizer. So this is what the colonizer would say. Okay, this is what the colonizer would say. Quote, "No need to hear your voice when I can talk about you better than you can speak about yourself. No need to hear your voice. Only tell me about your pain." Here's the research. Tell me about your pain. I want to know your story, and then I will tell it back to you, but in a new way. I will tell it back to you in such a way that it becomes mine. I am rewriting you. And in rewriting you, I write myself anew. I am the author. I am the authority. I am the colonizer, the speaking subject, and you are now at the center of my talk. Stop. So what Julie was realizing when she looked back on her own dissertation, she realized what she made sense of for herself was that she was becoming a colonizer in her qualitative research with those she has othered. And this was a problem for her. This became a problem for her. This became unethical. So continue with me as we explore Julie's thinking. So Julie revised her question. She started out up here in the dark blue box. Is what I do as a researcher and teacher every day, is it based on what I hold critical in my life? That was the question that she started with. And she revised it, as all good researchers. She then began asking the question, well, is there an ethical way to continue producing knowledge about other human beings? I mean, she was a researcher. She was an assistant professor trying to get tenure. Her job was research. So she asked that question in the middle box. Can I do my job in an ethical way, producing knowledge about other human beings? And then she even further tailored her question. Well, then who can I do research with or on? Only people who are my same race and class or gender? Is that what I'm saying? And who only those who have a similar background, those who make the same exact salary? Is there a way? So really the question is in the middle. Is there an ethical way to continue producing knowledge about other human beings, whether they are similar to me or not? Wow. Big question.
Yeah, talking about questions, dear Debra.
Yes, I see Raj.
Allow us to make a little comments, brief comments. First of all, Raj Jill in Canada.
And Debra, I think this is just such an eye-opener to think about the question, how it got modified based on her recognizing that she's othering. I think the whole human discourse right now is about seeing myself separate to others or even superior to others, and therefore being able to do something to tell the other how they need to be different.
Yes.
And I think that the whole colonization aspect, and then when the light bulb goes on, is I am with you, not trying to do this over you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Agree with you 100%, dear Raj. Anyone else who wants to make a brief comment or make a question about everything that we have been listening to? No? Okay. I was thinking about this, Debra, that we can become leaders even without having that objective in mind. Right? You can be the leader, and you don't know. And that is something that one of my language center directors said to me. He said, Jaime, students are watching you, listening to you, looking at you all the time. Anything you do or say is really important to them. So we gotta be careful with what we do, what we say, what we publish in Facebook, everything else, right?
And also, may I add that we have to question ourselves, as Julie did, right? And then we get to see more things, and we take this time to reflect on what we are doing, how we are doing it. Then more questions come up, and we start seeing things in a very different way.
That's true.
And that's what we are learning here.
Yeah, that's true, dear Glenda. Yeah, that's true. Anybody else wants to make a comment before Debra goes on? Well, Fillmore Murillo from Philippines, I guess he says, interesting point about othering as a form of colonizing others through research. Yeah, thank you so much, dear Fillmore. Okay, go on, dear Debra.
Thank you. Thank you. Great conversation.
Yeah.
So
wait. So, sorry, Debra. Ebenezer in Ghana.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Debra. I was so excited when you made mention of the fact that we can lead from everywhere and we don't need titles to lead. Of course, that has been one of my principles. When people are actually looking for titles, I will say that they want to occupy a position. Occupying that position, they are not looking for responsibilities. So leadership goes with responsibilities. We can lead from anywhere. We don't need a title to lead. Just go for responsibilities and then you will mature in that and grow. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And Rita Taki. Rita?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly. Where are you from, dear Rita?
Please, I'm speaking from Ghana.
Ghana. Oh, welcome, dear Rita. Go and ask your question or make your comment briefly, please.
Okay, so mine is a question.
Okay.
I'll be happy if Madam Debra, if I pronounce it well, she would also talk on how we have to do the corrections. If you find that you've made a mistake, how do you go back to do the correction? Because if you're a leader and you didn't know that you were authoritative, and now you found that your style of leading or teaching in the class was not the right way, how do you do the correction so that you do not affect the student?
Thank you, Rita.
Are you clear?
Excellent question.
Thank you. Thank you, Rita, for that question. I made a note. And if you may, I have some slides at the end that may adjust it, but I have written down your comment.
Thank you so much. And finally, Carol, briefly, please.
Yeah, I just have a comment of what Debra was talking about. And because I just finished reading with my class a short story by George Orwell called Shooting an Elephant. It takes place in Burma. And that's exactly what he discovered, why he hated his role as a colonizer, because he felt it limited his powers. When you're colonizing people, you're also limiting yourself. And he eventually realized his dilemma during this incident when he was called upon to shoot an elephant. because he was pressured by the native people to do so against his own conscience. But in order to save face, he had to continue with it. So this, that kind of brought that. And we just finished reading it, so it was fresh in my mind. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Carol. Okay, back to you, dear Debra.
Thank you. Thank you for all these great comments. And so continuing with this middle question here, is there an ethical way to continue producing knowledge about other human beings? So Julie, as I said, produced, I can say without a doubt, the most amazing piece of scholarship that I have ever read. And I have a citation for you to access it at the end, but that's her question. And so what she does is she does this literature review. She looks into philosophers and theorists. In particular, she explores Immanuel Levinas, who was a Jewish Lithuanian philosopher during World War II. She looks at the work of contemporary Patricia Hill Collins, an African-American sociologist, and also current Jonathan Crossan, who was a Jesus scholar. She looks at othering philosophies. She explores phenomenology, religious histories, feminist theories, and critical race theories. And she explores all these folks and she pulls it all together. I cannot do it justice, and I have the citation for you to read, but she pulls on all of these resources. And she comes up with what she calls a loving epistemology, right? So is there a way to be ethical? Is there a way to do ethical research with human beings, especially if they're different from me, but human beings? And she has 3 criteria for herself, and she calls it a fledgling epistemology. She's very humble, but these are the 3 criteria that she shares, and I want to share them with you. First, she says, any time I'm going to do research or as I'm engaging in research, I think that I'm engaging in a loving research by putting ethics before anything else. Ethics before ontology, trying to define things, ethics before epistemology. And I think we could probably make this a long list, right? Putting ethics before anything else that we're trying to do. Ebenezer, you mentioned trying to get a position, trying to get a title, right? Putting ethics before anything else. But that's her first, what she calls criteria for a loving epistemology. The second criteria is around the knowledge production. The second criteria is around looking at how she is producing knowledge and looking at the knowledge that she thinks she has produced. And what she wants to be careful of is that relationship between the researcher and the subject, but also the self to other selves. And so she borrows 3 questions from Patricia Hill Collins. And she says that research or critical theory, critical social theory that comes from research is a loving epistemology if the researcher can say yes to these 3 questions. Does your social theory speak truth to the people about the reality of their lives? Is this how they would define their reality? If it's not, if you're imposing your story, then this is not a loving epistemology. Number 2, and I think this comes to the heart of creating social change, and which is why I go back to this theory for educational change. Number 2, does this social theory equip people to resist oppression? And third, does it move them to struggle? And I know that we have a history in educational leadership in just this, and we can look at Paulo Freire, for example, right? Okay, is this research creating a mindset that now will encourage individuals to resist oppression and to struggle? So this is the second criteria that Julie says she's going to apply to her own research. These 3 questions. Does your social theory speak truth to them? Does it make sense to those you're working with? Does it equip them to resist oppression? Does it equip them, give them the ability to resist oppression and motivate them to struggle? And I hope that you're seeing that some of these ideas are very similar to the very first slide I showed you, which was about transformational leadership. So that's what Julie talks about. And here is the third criteria, and it's a real interesting one. It's a real interesting one. Julie talks about travel. The third criteria for her loving epistemology is traveling to someone else's world. Now, she makes note that traveling to other worlds sometimes has resulted in conquering and colonialism and objectifying others. She said, that's not the travel I'm talking about. That is not the travel I'm talking about. She talks about traveling to someone else's world. And it's so interesting here. She said, traveling to someone else's world is a way of identifying with them, because by traveling to their worlds, we can understand what it is to be them. And I put this in bold, what it is to be ourselves in their eyes. Traveling to others, to each other's worlds, to learn about them and to learn about us. So the third criteria for Julie's loving epistemology is traveling so that we can see ourselves in their eyes. Here's a really important quote that I wanted, because traveling is, this third criteria is a little bit, is so unique. I wanted to share this quote because I think it helps us to understand what Julie was talking about. Only when we have traveled in each other's worlds are we subjects to each other, right? Subjects to each other. Knowing others' worlds is part of knowing them, and knowing them is part of loving them. Without knowing the other's worlds, one does not know the other, and without knowing the other, one is alone.
Yeah.
And one is alone. Through traveling to others' worlds, we discover that there are worlds in which those who are victims of arrogant perception are really subjects, lively beings, resistors, and constructors of their own visions. So there's a lot here in terms of traveling, and Julie does play more with it. Learning each other and learning about ourselves. So to summarize, going back to the very first question that she posed, is what I do as a researcher and teacher every day based on what I hold critical in my life. And so the three criteria are of her loving epistemology. Is it ethical? Does my knowledge production meet these 3 points for a critical social theory? And are we traveling to each other's worlds? Okay, so let's come back to what I'm trying to figure out, right? And so a loving epistemology, what's love got to do with English language teaching, with TESOL and educational change? So I kind of, adopted, not adapted, but adopted Julie's question. Can we develop ways of creating transformational change in global educational environments that include compassion and empathy and love? Is there such a thing? And this next question, I need to give a shout out to a dear friend, former president of Maryland TESOL, Sherry Lyons. And I was talking with her about these ideas, and she was like, yeah, you're talking about leading with love. I said, oh, that's a great quote. Can I take that quote? So the question is there such a thing as leading with love? And is that leadership? Right? So now I'm taking, Julie's question, and I'm trying to put it into my own context about trying to develop this thing called transformational leadership as I work with teachers, right? As I do leadership development, mentoring. So I'll share with you how I am thinking about Julie's framework and see what you all have to say. So one of Julie's first question, is it ethical? So when I think about a loving epistemology, what's love got to do with TESOL and educational change? And if I were to apply my work to Julie's framework, is it ethical? I would have to say, in red there, that's kind of my response. Well, it depends. am I coming together around shared values and mutual purpose? So this educational change that I want to try to affect, is it being shared by the people that I'm working with? Do they also see this change as necessary? Are we sharing a mutual purpose rather than imposing an educational change on another group? That's my own first way of puzzling this through. Let's come to Julie's second criteria. Now, she talked about epistemological criteria for critical social theory. So here, to adapt a little bit, so it's not a social theory, but it's a movement of educational change. So asking my question, trying to explore what I'm doing, transformational change, educational change. The first question, does that change speak truth to the people about the needs and reality of their lives? We see this all the time. Groups coming from the outside into a local context saying, we're going to do this now. But does that speak truth to what they feel they need and their realities? So my answer again in red would be, it depends, right? It depends on their contextual needs. I can think about, for example, different kinds of educational change I've seen around the world. For example, teaching the native language in school, right? Trying to bring in the heritage language in the schools. And we have seen that happen in different contexts to greater or lesser extent. And one thing that we have seen when the native language has been brought into the schools is that if it is a spoken language primarily, this written system is imposed on that spoken language. And then therefore the language that you're teaching in schools really isn't the language that the grandparents are speaking and that the parents are speaking, right? And so that's an example of perhaps an educational change that would not meet this criteria because it did not start up from contextual needs. Maybe if we're trying to have heritage language maintenance, or if we're trying to encourage maintenance of a native language, we do it in another way. We bring in the grandparents and we get the kids and the grandparents speaking to each other. That's just one example. So any kind of educational change, does it arise from contextual needs? Which then comes to the next question. So Julie's question, does this social theory, or in our case, this educational change, equip people to resist oppression? So I would say to that, if I'm trying to bring information and ideas, that it would be, or if I'm in a context and others are bringing in ideas to me, the question really is not if it is imposed from without, but if it's growing from within. That need is growing from within. If someone's trying to impose on me, or if I'm trying to impose on others. And then the last bit, does this critical social theory move people to struggle? Well, in my context, I'm puzzling through transformational change in educational context. And so what I would ask, does it move them to struggle? And here's the thing, and this is where the notion of follower is different, right? It depends if we are elevating others, if we are putting others first. So in an educational change, are we elevating others? So let's say, coming to the example of coming into a school system and trying to impose a change. Well, we don't want to impose, we want to grow from within, but are we enabling them to struggle, them in this case being the teachers? Well, we need to elevate the teachers. We need to put them first. We need to empower them, and then perhaps walk away and enable them to continue. So for myself, using Julie's questions as a framework, what I come to as someone who is working in educational change and transformational change is the focus on contextual needs, the focus on not imposing from without, but growing from within. And probably the most important is to elevate others, to step sideways, to enable others. And I think, when I think about it, that's what Dr. Lydia Tarnowski was doing back when she was developing teacher training centers in Ukraine back in the late 1990s. So this is how I think that with some conversation, we could probably even push this further. Hi, May, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, sorry. You're sharing with us lots of very important pieces of information. So we got a very beautiful group of people here from Ecuador, from Ghana, from Guatemala, from different countries. So maybe one of them or some of them want to make some questions or comments about these very important questions you are posing. Anybody has a question? Please, anybody wants to ask something or make a comment? Anyone? Come on, do not be shy. Speak up. Yeah.
Okay,
Hello, Ilka in Ecuador. Good morning.
I will not be shy.
Please do
Good
not.
morning. Thank you. Thank you for presenting all these ideas. But yeah, I agree. I should say that I agree, because when you're a teacher trainer, even though you know 12, 18 people you have in front of you, they're all English teachers from Ecuador, we assume that they're coming from the same background, and that's a huge mistake.
Yes.
Another assumption that can lead us to mistakes is that since they are English teachers, all of them, they're facing the same challenges in their classes. And I will probably put on the table another difference, which is generation differences. If you are 22 years old, the challenge of the generations, that the same challenges that we used to face when we used to be 22 years old and we're still working. And even though we're 50, 54, we are doing the best with all the tools that we had, that we're still practicing. And the most important thing is that we're trying to evolve along the changes of our students. So teacher training, yeah, you need to love your profession. You need to love the others, the human beings that you have in front of them, also in front of you, also respect them. But at the same time, and my question answer right away, or it's going to take 4 years, but how can you manage all those differences within what we assume is the same culture, what we assume is the same background, which actually it's not. It's not. So there, my comment and my question is on the table. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear Ilka. As usual, a very wise woman. Thank you so much. Anybody else, or just we go on? Anyone else wants to make any other comment? As I said at the beginning, do not be shy. Glenda, please go on.
Yes, well, I think that as my colleague mentioned some minutes ago, I had to face that challenge. Now I am older, wiser, I guess. But when I first started teaching, I had like a dilemma like this, and I left. I was a teacher. I was appointed to work at a public school, and I did so for 10 years. But I left because I had this, and I didn't know I didn't know what to do, because I felt that I was trying to teach my students English, but they didn't need to learn English. They needed someone. They needed a tutor. They needed to learn about other things. They needed somebody, they needed a psychologist. They didn't need English. What they needed in that moment was different. And I felt I couldn't help them when I was just teaching English, because I had to cover like the lessons and things. But I also spent some of my time doing other things that were not teaching English. And I felt I couldn't really get to them through the language, because they had very limited knowledge of it, and what they needed most was like someone like a tutor to discuss other things, which they still couldn't do in English. And in public schools, at least when I started working as a teacher, it was the first time they were getting to see the language, because in a public school in those days, you just learned it in secondary school, and I didn't know how to deal with this, and I felt frustrated. And then I ended up deciding making a big choice, which was just leaving the school and working at a language school where I could teach English, where people joined to learn the language, because I wanted to teach English, but I felt these students needed something completely different, which I could not give them completely, and I felt helpless in in those days. And well, that's my personal experience.
Thank you so much, Dia. Thank you, Glenda. Go back to you, Debra.
Thank you, Glenda. Thank you for sharing that. You know, it goes to show that our heart is in what we do. So thank you for sharing that. That's really special. And maybe at another TESOL conference, we'll sit and have a cup of coffee and talk more about that. I would enjoy that. And then the first person who spoke, I think her name is Irma. Is that correct? Ilka, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you for that.
Actually both. Irma can go and Ilka too. So
sorry, my dear treasurer. I'm so sorry.
But thank you.
That's okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I don't know the answer to those questions. And I think that the first step, though, is asking the question, you know, and that's just it. You know, every time we're in a situation, we begin to see the differences amongst the people there, right, and the different needs. And so I don't know the answer, but I think, again, that's something to explore. And that's kind of what we're talking about here, coming together as a group. So thank you for raising those issues. And it's about the evolution as well. Okay, so moving on. So this is how I am using Julie's framework. And again, I'm putting a lot on Julie's framework, which I hope you understand why. But here's her last point. Her last question is, are we traveling to each other's worlds? So when I apply this question for us, I mean, we do this. We're in this profession because we love languages and we love cultures and all those reasons. So I think this might be a little bit closer to what we do. But Julie, again, talks about travel in a very different way. Travel to learn each other and to learn ourselves. And how can we travel? Clearly it's traveling, but also we're doing virtual traveling, chatting, reading literature written by each other, discussing, and especially taking turns. So that's how, in red there is my response to what I would say as leaders and developing a transformational leadership, how we can travel to each other's worlds, but most especially taking turns. So now I'm coming back to a slide that I usually use when I do workshops in developing leadership. And these are leadership practices of transformational leaders. As I shared with you, this notion of transformational leadership started by Burns in the late 1970s. And the ideas have evolved and have been added to over the past couple decades. And we are at the point where Clavel in 2018 offered these transformational leadership practices. And if you see here, so modeling the way, Jaime, you mentioned this very early on, being
yes.
modeled, challenging the process, enabling others to act. But then also we have kind of the two things here that sometimes get lost a little bit: encouraging the heart and inspiring a shared vision. So, and this is something I've been working on, you know, this is in no way done, but this is something I've been working on. So when I do leadership workshops, I present this framework to teachers. And I suggest, and I did a presentation after the Panama TESOL. Some of you may have been there, and I offered this. I did a presentation recently for Illinois TESOL, and I offered this. So I'm sharing it with all of you because this is I'm sharing with you the background behind this work. So I offer this as a leadership focus. And what I say, I suggest is that we can map our own career journeys. And like on the left-hand side, you know, mapping your career journey. For me, I've had classroom teaching, I've developed subject matter expertise, and I've worked in educational administration. And then on the right-hand side, to list for ourselves other ways that we have shown up in the profession. And that could be, you know, being a member of TESOL International, TESOL affiliates, community groups showing up here. And so by exploring this, by exploring our own career journey, we then can begin to see themes throughout what we've done. And that tells us a little bit about our values, our insights, principles, what is our guiding light and our North Star? And, you know, career journey, we could even include in the career journey work that we've done outside of the TESOL space, right? It doesn't have to be only in the TESOL space, but a career journey. And Glenda, that's one of the reasons why I'm so thankful that you shared your experience, because that is clearly something that's going to help for you to determine what insights and values that you've developed over your career, right? Yeah, exactly. I see your heart. So yeah, and that's something that helps us to see a thread of what we hold in our hearts, right? So, and that is this. Oh, so I'm sorry, maybe I went away from that a little too quickly. Feel free to write that down. But by looking at our journey, we can begin to see our values, insights, and what we hold dear. And this is the other piece of the framework. By looking at, reflecting on our own ELT career path and our leadership paths in TESOL space, we can begin to identify our vision for leadership and impact. So this is the work I've done. These are the values I have. This is a vision that I have for impact, because that's where it's coming from, growing from within your ELT context. So this is a framework that I've developed for teachers who are developing leadership, not just teachers, administrators as well. And this is what I've put together for myself, and also a shout out to my colleague Doa Rashid, because we've been working on this together. And it's a way of pulling up a focus of educational change, a focus of educational impact within our own context. So I'm doing the best I can to figure this out and to ask myself the tough questions. But you know what? I want to come back to Julie. And I think now you'll understand, when I share this, you'll understand why it's so important to me to share Julie's philosophy with you. So I shared her homework was her last lecture. Julie gave that lecture in March of 1999. And just a few days after she gave that lecture, where she questioned herself and asked herself the hardest questions, where she explored philosophies and theorists, and she came up with a loving epistemology for herself. Just 2 or 3 days later, Julie died. She was driving from Alabama to Florida. It was the Easter season, and she got in a car, hugged her friends goodbye, and she was killed on the highway. That became her last lecture. And it was published. It was published after her death. I have had this article pinned above my computer for 20 odd years. And I can't tell you how many times I've read this. And every time I've read her article, I have learned something new. My presentation for you today is the first time I ever tried to really recreate how it has affected me, but it has affected me without my articulating it since 1999. This is an article that I have shared, not a whole lot, because sometimes, you know, it's a very heartfelt thing, and Julie is talking about faith, and not everybody wants to read about that, but I have shared it on a few occasions. And when I've shared it, those people have told me that it's changed their lives. One person told me, you know, I shared it to with a doctoral student, and she said, you know what, I was thinking about dropping out because I didn't see meaning in this doctoral program for myself. I see it now, and she completed her doctoral program. So this is why it's important to me. This is the last sentence of Julie's article. She says, so I'd like to end on Julie's last sentence. My advice to you in this, my last lecture, is to travel knowing that you are responsible for others. They are a part of you. You do not exist without them. And I wish you well on your journeys. I have carried that in my heart. And I want to share one, as teachers, we always want to give an example. And one example of a loving epistemology is right here. the International English Online Meetings. And Jaime, the first time I started participating in your meetings several months ago, it just pulled at me. You've developed a community of knowledge and friendship and love that's global. And I think that you are a leader who embodies epistemology, a loving epistemology. Julie is memorialized in the University of Alabama lecture series. You can see some of the series, and I include the that link, and maybe we can somehow get it to you if you're interested. And then of course, here is the citation that I can give. So I don't know, Jaime, how we can get those 2 citations to folks. But with that, I want to, and then here's my LinkedIn if you want to connect. But I want to say thank you for giving me this space. I've never done this before in this way. And Jaime, thank you so much. Thank you for this.
Thank you, dear Debra. Okay, that's what I wanted to show, the link, your LinkedIn, and also your email, because I'm sure that after this presentation, many people will want to contact you and write to you and visit you, and not only Glenda have that cup of tea or coffee, because I feel jealous. If it is only Glenda. No, we want to thank you so much, dear Debra. And now we have like 10, 15, 20 minutes to talk and discuss. So if you stop sharing, thank you so much. So now it's the time for us to reflect, to speak up, and comment on what Debra has presented. Thank you so much, dear Debra, because you are, I know that you are a top one in the world. You are a very famous and a very professional woman, and I'm just a follower. In spite that you said that follower is not, it has a negative connotation these days, but something that you mentioned at the beginning was followers motivate other people, followers and leaders motivate each other, followers inspire, leaders inspire followers, and leaders emphasize oh my goodness, I can't read my own writing. Emphasize new possibilities, I guess. Okay, I would like to add that not only leaders do that, but also our students, our followers. They give us a lot of knowledge, a lot of things to learn from them. And the question and the answer is why? Because they are just human beings like us. I always emphasize and highlight that in spite we are PhD, master, book writers, whatever, we are all the same because we are human beings. So thank you so much, dear Debra. Now this is the time for the great people we have here today from different parts of the world to make comments or questions. Anybody? Yes, Tania Anchante in Lima, Peru.
Okay, I really liked what you have shared with us today, dear Debra. I have learned that leading people or leading our students is also taking risks with them. And that is something that we should do, because in that way, or doing that, we learn too. And accepting also that perhaps we as leaders, or the moment that we are leading people, we need to accept that we don't know all. And we need to learn from them, and we need to empower them. And that is a question that I would like to know. Perhaps we have to share, as you have said, this mutual purpose with the rest. And also, what is something that perhaps you would like to achieve before this year finishes? Or perhaps also a strategy that it has worked for you to motivate and to keep motivated the team.
Thank you, dear Tania. So back to you, Debra.
Yeah, I'll do my best. I'll do my best. So yeah, we need to learn from each other. So one thing that I find helpful when I am doing these workshops is that, and I hope I'm answering your question, but one thing I try to do is that when I ask the teachers, my students, to do these exercises, I do it myself. not as a model, but as a way of then engaging with them. So I'm doing the activity. So I showed you that framework, the yellow paper framework.
Yeah.
And I do that also. And when I do that, that's a way, and then we share, and then that's a way of learning from them, and they're learning from me. So to do the work along with them that I'm asking them to do. So that's one way. The other question, I want to make sure I get it. The other question, the second question was?
What is something that you're planning to achieve this year?
Many things, I'm sure.
Well, that's, yeah, many things, many things. You know, I want to continue working on this, this presentation. As I've shared, this is the first time that I articulated this. This is the first time that I've articulated the impact of Julie's work on me, on myself. And I'd like to really work this out. It's fledgling right now. So I really want to do that. And I guess I think it's okay to share that I am a candidate for TESOL International Presidency, along with some very excellent, wonderful people. There are many wonderful people on the slate. And that is something that that I hope, that of course, that I hope happens, because I'm just at that point in my career where I want to give back to others and just do this work. And lastly, I hope to get off my sofa and travel around. I'm just sitting here on my couch in my living room, and I'd like to travel. But thank you, Tanya, for those questions. Thanks.
Well, mi casa es tu casa, dear Debra, here in Peru. Carol, and then Fillmore in Philippines.
Yeah, I just have a small comment when you're talking about followers, because I think I don't call them followers, but my students, and I learned so much from them. So this theory of learning from each other is very much prevalent in the classroom, I think. And I tell them that all the time. In fact, we're doing a research paper, which I've never really done in a classroom. I've not taught, I taught TESL, but to better help them and to let them see my struggle, I'm going to do it with them. I'm going to do a research thing on language too. And we're working through the library to help on this. So I think my students are my best teachers.
Definitely.
They inspire me. They make me think and, go outside of the box and, come up with different ways of approaching something that, like you say, so that you're not colonizing. I think,
yeah.
So Deborah, thank you. You've been very inspirational. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, dear Carol. Fillmore Murillo in the Philippines.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Good evening here in the Philippines.
Evening.
So I am Fillmore. Actually, I am very appreciative of this presentation of Debra. I've been, by the way, I've been seeing posts of Debra in various groups where I am also a part of. So I really intentionally to join in the Zoom room, because last week, actually, I joined via Facebook.
Yes.
But I made sure that I'm part of the group. Now, earlier, Debra has been talking about colonizing, the concepts of colonizing, the concept of English language. So I think we were born in a world where English is already established as the international language. And we know that English usually is identified with the West, with the Americans, with the European. So when it comes to going to communities in a way not to colonize them, but if we do that while teaching the English language, there seems to be this connotation that when you teach English, you are already colonizing. That's why it's something that I'm really interested in, because right now I'm really into multiculturalism. I'm really into using indigenous cultural heritage. So what other tips, Debra, can you share with us so that we can still teach English language to other people, but we allow them to maintain their identity, their cultural heritage, so that there can be a wonderful marriage of the two? Thank you.
Thank you, dear Fillmore. Before Debra answers the question, please, you should be one of our guest speakers, dear Fillmore, next year, definitely. because not only because you are from the Philippines, but also because of the great ideas I've been listening from you. So if you contact me, I will contact you. We will contact each other to have you as a guest speaker next year, please, Fillmore.
Yes, I'll be happy to support this initiative.
Thank you so much. Okay, Debra, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Fillmore, for that. And I'm going to be only one voice in responding to that, because I think everybody here has some thoughts on that as well. But I would respond by saying that, yeah, yes, we have seen, English as a language of colonization, and English, right? And we have seen in other colonizers use, even if the language wasn't English, using that language to colonize, right? And so we have seen, I'm not going to call it anything, but we have definitely seen colonizers who have increased literacy rates when they go into a place, increased literacy rates, but not in the native language, in the colonizer language, right? We've definitely seen that. But these are good questions, and I can only answer from my own personal perspective, and also having looked at, heritage language, the heritage literature of heritage languages, that I think that if we focus on giving English as a gift to then be used, how individuals are going to use it or not, I think that's the most important thing, right? So in some contexts, English in particular, it might be the language of business, right? We can use that as a tool. But then also at the same time, this is something that I don't think we do enough, is to bring in other languages. One thing that's really difficult is that talk about a colonizing language. English is a colonizing language in academia, that in order to publish, right, you need to be writing and publishing in English. Well, what can we do to actually open up other publication outlets that are considered, valuable across the globe, but in other languages? So I would say that my immediate response are those two things: that English is a tool to be used, is a gift to be used in what way, and then it is only one thing, but then to use those practices to uplift other languages as well. I don't know if other folks have some thoughts too.
Oh, yeah, Debra, I love what you said about English is a gift. I've always heard that it's a tool, but now it's beautiful to say that it's a gift. If you want, use it. If you want, open it. If you want, throw it away, but it's up to you. Yeah, Olenka and Roxy in Lima and Chiclayo, they wanted to talk. Roxy, are you over there? Roxana?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you, Jaime. Well, Debra, I want to say that this has been an honor to have the possibility to listen to your talk. This is the way, a long time ago, somebody has talked to my heart. You have not talked to my brain, you have talked to my heart. And I'm involved in all the things you have mentioned. This is one of the talks I need to listen again, definitely. And there have been a lot of information, a lot of interesting and important things that will have changed my life today. Today, I could say, is the beginning of a new path. Probably I have done things unknowing that they were going to be, but I think that we teachers in this community that Jaime has organized has given a blessed. Today is a blessing day for me. It's something different, it's something new, and I think it's not going to be the same as it was yesterday. And I feel so deeply involved in the case of Julie, that she was asked, give this talk as it were going to be your last, and it was. We never know that. And I think we have to live every day as it were the last one. We have to give our last classes as it were the last one. We have to talk to our teachers when we are trainers as it were the last one. We never know, we are not going to have more possibilities. And we would be in the path and we say, what about if I had said this? What about if I had not done that? Why to be in that? So I will feel really, really happy if I go to bed, put my head on the pillow and say, great. It was a fantastic day. Today, my teaching, my talk, my way of living was a lot better than yesterday, but never as good as it's going to be tomorrow. There is always something very important here. And I feel really, really deeply involved in this. I can say that all these words, all this way of thinking has to make us feel it. Not only think about it, but feel it. If I put all my ethic inside, not only in education, but in all the fields of our countries that we are here and all around the world would be different. Ethic, values, a lot more important than knowledge. Knowledge definitely is important, but as Glenda commented, that she has this conflict. Am I in the correct path? I think all of us have been in those cases, and we have to take a decision. So this door closest to me today, doesn't matter. There are a lot of other choices. There are a lot of other doors to be opened in order to follow them. So Debra, thank you. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart.
Dear Roxy, this is the second time you leave me speechless. Last Sunday, you gave us such a beautiful wrapping up, just like today. And I thank you so much, dear Roxy, for such beautiful, wonderful, and inspiring words. And secondly, congratulations. I love your living room. It just looks luxurious. Thank you so much. Before Debra answers, Olenka also wanted to say something because her hand, she was raising her hand. Olenka, are you around?
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Debra Suarez, for these wonderful presentations. As Rosanna said, it touched my heart. Okay, it was very enjoyable, the experience that you shared with us. And also it's important that we learn from each other. Traveling is the key to learn from other cultures, to know more. It's very important to give values. Our thought is not only teaching, all right? It's more than we want. It's to be friends of our students, interact in different communities. So for that, you grow as a human being, and it's very inspirational for me and from everybody who are here. So thank you, Debra, for these quotations. I learned a lot from that, and I really appreciate that. And also the framework that you showed, it really inspired me because it's a step by step, okay? Not only to develop according to our career, but also try to be part of different associations. Everything is free, all right? And they don't pay you, but you grow a lot with experts from different part of the area. So this is the reason that TESOL is a family. I encourage you to be part of that because I really enjoyed learning from each other. And thank you very much, Jaime, also for the invitation. Thank you.
Thank you. I was waiting for you to mention my name. Thank you, dear Olenka. Before you give your final words today in this presentation, Debra, let us hear the president of our association, Raj in Canada, and then Glenda.
Debra, I smile as he calls me president of the association. This is an honorary title. I love this community. Jaime has created a heartfelt community in which we share. Your presence today, Debra, with your message just actually gelled the whole thing together. Because, you know, people don't care how much you know till they know you care.
Yes.
And so how do we show that care? I think that's what you spoke about. A few points that I want to really give gratitude and thank you for is that are we traveling to each other's worlds? Even right now, as I'm on the phone and on this with you, it's like travel. So if I'm going to give a talk in another country, it's important that I learn about that country, even though I'm not physically traveling there. You mentioned virtual, you know, chats, all of that, and how to engage with that. And the last part I want to say is we can lead from anywhere. I can lead from the back of the room. I can lead from the front of the room. And just knowing that the leadership isn't the title. The leadership is who I'm being with others.
Yes.
What a beautiful presentation, Deborah. Hats off to you. It was just delightful to be engaging with you. Would love to continue connecting with you. Jaime, thank you for this connection.
Thank you so much, my dear president. And I call her president because when I met you, Raj, over there in Costa Rica, and I was listening to you, I learned that you are a wonderful human being. So let me call you and keep on calling you president of our association. Thank you so much. Glenda in Peru.
Yes, well, what else can I say? Well, just thank you, Deborah. It's been a very, a beautiful Sunday. I mean, the way to begin, when I read the title, I was completely unaware what this was going to be like, but this is like, wow. I mean, I hadn't heard of Julie, but now I'm so interested in her. And I loved this thing you said, that English is a gift. I'm going to tell that to my students. English is a gift. Yes, I had never, I mean, it's so simple, so short, and this is what I say English is, and this is a language I love, and now I feel like more connected to my teaching and my students, and all you said resonated with me, and I want to keep exploring that. As I said, when I first started teaching and I had just left university and went to this classroom and this place, I had no idea how to, I had no tools. I didn't know how to face the challenge I was given. But now I feel more empowered and I think I'm on track. So thank you very much for your words and Jaime for making events like this possible.
No, thank you, dear Glenda, and thank you all the people like you, Olenka, and many people that have been guest speakers in these international meetings. I could not do anything without people like you. I could organize, but if I don't have guest speakers, if there is no audience, what can I do? Nothing. So we help each other, we give and receive, and we have built this community together. So thank you, everyone. And I wrote my WhatsApp number because there are some people from Guatemala, from Ghana, from different countries. So if you want to contact me, so you can get the link for future presentations, feel free to contact me. Anybody else wants to talk, or we just go to Debra's final words today in her presentation? No? Okay, so your final words today, my dear Debra.
Thank you, sir. I think my final words, it's just thank you for your reception and for your community. That's all. There's nothing really else left to say. But thank you for being encouraging about this work. I'll see you next time.
Yeah, I'll see you when I see you. Okay, so thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Keep safe and have a nice Sunday. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye in the Zoom and the Facebook Live. Thank you. Goodbye. See you next Sunday.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Thank you, Debra.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Debra. Time for me to cook, Debra.
Debra, the president. It's going to happen.
Time for everybody to do something. Nice to see you, Raj. Bye-bye, everybody. Take care. Blessings.
Goodbye, Angelica Sandoval and friend.
Nice.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Where are you? Guatemala. Beautiful Guatemala. See you. See you. Goodbye.
I made Debra for President TESOL.
Yes, I know. She will be. She will be, definitely. She's got our vote.
Definitely got our vote. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.